Hey everybody, RC here, back with WWCF Radio. This will be episode number 3, and I am actually joined by a guest host in Sean Murphy today. Sean is our Colorado coach. He also coaches the Tar Heels of North Carolina, and his favorite team is Wyoming. Not sure why, but hey, to each his own, I suppose. Welcome, Sean.
Wow, thank you very much, John.
Well, we've been
Uh,
we, we've been trying to get this Skype thing worked out to where we could record together here for a while. So I appreciate Sean's patience in dealing with my stupidity. And hey, we'll let him get this out of his system. And after this episode, he'll probably never even want to talk to me again.
well, and I apologize it's taken so long. I've been out of the country and dealing with the crud. So if I sound like I'm coughing on now, I probably am because I got viral bronchitis on my trip. So it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun.
Caught that from the Finland women, from what I understand. That's the rumor. Well, what we want to cover today is, we're moving into the end of the off season in WWCF. We have finished recruiting, and so I figured after Mike came back and kicked everybody's ass with Ohio State, we could come in and talk about what a god he is, or we could just talk about how everybody else sucks. One of the two. So we've got Bowl Bound pulled up here for us to look at. Of course, this is just an audio recording for the radio show, but we will actually be sharing computer monitors. I've put up my porn off to the side so he could be distracted. But anyway, we take a look starting at number 1. Mike Dills and Ohio State set a league record for the history of the league with 3,176 points. And if I recall correctly, Cal had the previous high, 3130, back in 2004. So that was a record that stood for 21 seasons. And Mike just blew that out of the water by 40 points. He did have one extra person. Just comparing their classes, very similar. Mike ended up with one extra 4-star, but everything else in that is very similar. And those two classes by far dominate the history of our league. But 21 years, 2 decades of games before anybody even remotely challenged that record. And then, of course, my Texas program, 600 points back, was good enough for second place. I'm not even sure Mike could see my headlights in his rearview mirror. We basically got trucked this year by the Buckeyes. So, Sean, what do you think about that, man? I mean,
I think you sell yourself a little bit too short. Like I told you earlier, looking over the available recruits that were in the Great Plains, or is it Great Plains or Midwest region? I mean, it's literally Ohio State and Michigan across the board. I think Cincinnati may have grabbed one or two of those top blue chip prospects, but for the most part, I mean, yeah, he did edge you out quite a bit, but I don't think it's anything to scoff at. I mean, how many 5-stars did Michigan pull in?
3.
3,
Yeah,
but still,
3.
you had 15-4, so it's still not a shabby recruiting class you got there.
No, I'm pretty happy with it. But just you just look at those 11 5-stars. I mean, what? Let's see, 5'9".
Oh, it's unheard of.
I mean, he got more than almost every other team combined in 5
Yeah.
stars. Alabama doesn't do that in real life, and they pay players. I mean, so anyway, Ohio State. If we go in and look at his team, well, we'll do that later. We'll just go through the recruiting here. Typical cast of characters, I think. Texas number 2. Ole Miss is a team that really slides under the radar, I think. I don't want to upset him, but Ole Miss is one of those teams that I hear from a lot of people that, in fact, well, Sean, you know the rule that we have where everybody has to play one human owner.
Yep.
Actually, that's actually called the Ole Miss rule because he had a habit of, on the first day of scheduling, he would throw out 4 computer teams, and he'd be done. And he'd have like the number 125 strength of schedule. And we got a lot. We got a few complaints from people. But hey, it was within the rules. But we did feel, hey, if you're in an online league, isn't the goal to interact with each other? I mean, if you just want to play the computer, play a solo.
You can do that on your own.
Yeah, you can play a solo game. So we did implement that rule. It was certainly not meant to slight him, and let me tell you, it hasn't phased his team in the least, because in the couple of years that we've been doing that, he's still rolling up the wins, and he's scheduling a human team, and you can see he's recruiting like a devil down there in the Southland. Michigan, I take a lot of grief because I have 2 power schools. I don't care. I started with Texas when the league started, and I've built them into what they are today. I don't apologize for that. And Michigan is my lifetime program. That is.
No, I'm pretty sure I remember you took Texas because Michigan was already taken, so you just kind of sat on Texas for quite some time. So
they were, and in fact, I did not even jump on Michigan. We went through, I think Michigan went through 5 owners, if I remember correctly, and the last owner had quit exporting, went 0-8 in the Big Ten, and Mike reached out to me at that point. He goes, "It must be killing you to see Michigan falling apart." And I went, "You have no idea." And so at that point, he said, "Well, I know you've told me to keep giving other people a chance, but we've been through 5 owners when most programs had one or 2 owners." And he says, "If you want them, I'm going to give them to you," because he goes, "I know they won't have a new coach until the league ends." And I said, "Well, you're right about that." And so, they weren't a great program when I took them over. They were good. I mean, I think they were in the low 80 prestige range, and I've gotten them up into the low 90s, and now you can see right here they're at 87. So I mean, I've done okay with them, but with Mike back at Ohio State, my short tenure of competing for conference titles in the Big Ten have gone by the wayside, I'm afraid, and I'm playing for, I don't know, Peach Bowl or something now.
You just got to channel. You got to channel your inner Harbaugh there. I mean, come on.
Well, I've tried to find the khaki button in the game, and I've tried to find the secret sleepover at a recruit's house and climb a tree, but I can't find those options in the pitch section. But I have looked. I tell you what, Rutgers is a team that jumps out at me. First off, Rutgers, how the hell is Rutgers number 5 in recruiting? That's what I want to know. There's definitely got to be some payola going on here, but.
Well, it's well known they have one of the least experienced coaches in all of our leagues. So, well, I mean, really.
Yeah, I mean, he sucks, obviously. Actually, Myrle is, my rivalry with Texas, and this goes all the way back to when WWCF started. I had a huge rivalry with James Spinato, JCW, when he was at Oklahoma. And then, of course, he left the league, and he's come back, but he's back at Oklahoma now. But his departure from Oklahoma, subsequently their move from the South to the North Division as well, really hurt the rivalry. But he and I were huge rivals. Myrle came in, and Texas Tech was a program that nobody had heard of. They weren't competing in the Big 12. And he came in, and he's pretty much the top team in the Big 12 now with Texas Tech, and look what he's done with Rutgers. That's just astounding to me, which shows, he plays himself off with his multiple personalities, and as a goof, but this guy really knows the game, and he knows how to play it well.
Well, you also have to always fear a man who knows history as well as he does. I've read some of his old posts, and I know that just from conversations with him, what a history buff he is. And anyone that's that big of a historian has got a mind that is adapt to games like this.
Right. So definitely, but I mean, you look at me at number 2 and 4. He's right there at number 5 and number 10, and that's on points. If we go to average stars, I think he actually, he jumps up to number 5 and number. Well, let's see, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, not 5 and 9 in average points, which
Yep.
both of those are really good classes. Ohio State, God, I hate them. I don't obsess too much. Utah. I don't even know who the Utah coach is now, to be honest with you.
Let me check. I got the owner's page up actually because I was looking at something. It is. Let me see if I can find, because I was actually looking. So one of the programs I was impressed with, and I had to look to see if they had a coach, and anyone out there is looking for another team. Troy had a surprisingly good recruit class this year for a CPU-run team. I think they had one of the most 3-star recruits for a program in their conference. That's not too bad.
Let's see. Utah's where? Oh, that's
Rick Sullivan.
Okay, Rick
Yep.
Sullivan. So I don't know Rick. I've actually never interacted with Rick as far as I know. If I have, I'm sorry. If I haven't, I'm sorry. I'm on the forum all the time. Hit me up with a message or something. I'll talk to you. It's nothing personal. Now, I do remember when the league started. In fact, now Rick came in 2019, and we're in 2025. So he's been there about 6 years. I remember Danny, the coach at North Texas, it was his cousin that was the Utah coach. And he was there and built them up into the power that they are, and actually got them promoted up into the Pac-12, which I believe, and I could be wrong on this, but I believe they were the first team to qualify for a conference promotion when we put that up as a point of discussion for the league. And so they were the first team, I think, to actually switch conferences. And Rick has done a great job, evidently, flying under the radar, and also of keeping Utah at the top of the boards, because he put together a really good class this year. We go down Florida, Alabama. Typical cast of characters there. Florida, of course, was blown out, unfortunately, in the title game, much like yourself, where you were overseas. I know Harry was overseas as well. I forget where he was at. Africa, maybe? I know he mentioned it on the forum, but I don't recall off the top of my head. But how many championship games or Final Fours has Florida been to under him? I mean, just model of consistency.
Yeah.
Bama.
Well, it also helps when you consistently pick up some of the top players in the recruiting classes. I think he got the number 1 overall this year, didn't he?
Possibly. Let's see. Well, we'll have to go look at his team later on.
Yeah.
Let's just kind of breeze through the rest of these. Cal, Mr. Sandbag himself, finished at number 11. He probably considers that a failure, and means he'll probably lose every game this year. At least he would have us believe that. In fact, I took in our sister league, the GDCFL, I actually just switched over to Cal, and when you have so many things going on in your mind, I was thinking it was this Cal, and I got to him and I went, wow, this Cal actually sucks. And it wasn't anywhere near as good as this Cal is.
I definitely think it's funny that in both leagues that you and I played in, John, Cal is not a historically dominant team unless you go back to the 80s when, like Ron Rivera and those guys were actually playing at Cal. But in both these leagues, in both our league as well as the old Gridiron Glory, those coaches actually turned Cal into some pretty big powerhouses.
Well, speaking of that, I believe, if I remember correctly, and you probably know the answer better than I do, was it Marcus Kay, the coach at Cal in Gridiron Glory?
I think it was, wasn't it? No, Stacy was USC. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, Stacy Bond.
Okay.
I knew him more from OOTP leagues.
Okay.
In fact, it's funny you mentioned him. Boy, talk about a tangent. I used to have a job where I traveled a lot and around the country and some places around the world. I actually got the opportunity to meet Stacy out in California, and he knew I was a big California Angels fan, and we had known each other through OOTP for years, and he found it. I told him I was coming out to the LA area with my job for a couple of weeks, and he surprised me and had tickets to an Angels home game. So
Oh, nice.
I actually got to go see my first. I was an Angels fan going all the way back to the '70s, but never had seen them play. And so yeah, saw my first Angels game because of Stacy Bond. What? Where are they now? Where is Stacy? We need to know. If anybody
Yep.
knows where he is, tell him to call us up.
Yep.
Maryland, well, I'm just going to skip Maryland because we talk about Maryland way too much all season long, and I don't see that stopping anytime soon with this result. But no, we were talking about Marcus K coaching Cal
Yep.
in Gridiron Glory. Well, if I recall correctly, looking at Utah just a second ago, Marcus recently came back to the league. He was in the league for a while, then he left. In fact, he might have had Cal at that time, but he has come back and now he is the USC coach and number 13 rated class.
Yep.
So he hasn't missed a step either. Uh, there's a long list of guys in this league that have been playing probably all the way back to the foundation in '05 with the release of this game, and I don't know exactly how many owners we have that have ties back to Gridiron Glory, but it's quite a few.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how many of those guys are so quiet. You don't even think about them, but they're there, just kicking ass and taking names. Georgia, another SEC program. Virginia Tech. James came back to Oklahoma. Was it this year or last year? Let's see. Big 12. OU 2024. So he just came back last year. So this is his first recruiting class, and they finished number 16. So he certainly remembers how to recruit. And I know there's been a little upheaval in the Big 12 North. Like I said, that's always been an afterthought within the Big 12. We always had the Big Three with Texas, OU, and Texas Tech, and then we had the realignment, and OU just dominated. But this year, Danny came in with North Texas and won the North and beat Texas Tech to win the Big 12 championship. And I want to say that's only the third team, counting Oklahoma, from the Big 12 North to win the conference title. All the other ones have been either OU, Texas, or Texas Tech.
Yeah, I had my shot last season. I made it to the conference title game against Texas Tech and did not prevail.
Oh, well, yeah, not many people prevail against Myro, man.
No.
He's been a force down there lately.
I'm just happy I can beat Idaho from time to time. So.
Well, North Texas, a top 25 class. Speaking of Danny, I mean, he came in mostly 3 stars still. I mean, but he's still a really low prestige team in the scheme of things. Let's see if we jump over to the standings here. I guess I could have just pulled up the prestige page, but that would be too easy. All right, so North Texas. So he just got to a 70 this year. Now, I know I've pointed this out on the forums before, but Danny started at South Florida, which was a nothing program, built them up, got them promoted, stepped down, went back down and got Texas Tech, and I think they were a team in the 30 prestige range. And he's built them up over the years to a 70 prestige. They're also so he's gotten South Florida promoted one conference. North Texas has now been promoted 2 conferences. I would dare say he's the only coach in either of the two leagues that has gotten 3 promotions at all with any of his teams. I think he has done a really bang up job. He's right up there with Darren as far as offensive. He's definitely one of the offensive gurus of uh, of the game. I mean, there's. I remember there was a situation a few years ago where he lost his first and second string quarterback, and his third string quarterback was some schmo that was like rated like 2/4 or something stupid like that,
Yep.
and threw for like 700 yards in like 2.5 quarters. And I was like, man, I can't get 5-star recruits to do that, and he's doing that with some 1-star schlub. Um, and you know, both him and Darren. I mean, you know, I consider myself a pretty good coach. I have nothing for those guys. I mean, I have
Well,
tried so many. My Texas team, I guarantee you, my Texas team probably has 40 to 50 defensive schemes that I've created trying to deal with those passing attacks. And yet, when I run into Maryland in the playoffs or the title games, he beats me by 60 points. Like, and I'm like, I got nothing. I have no answer for what they do, and I've tried to copy it, and my offense does pretty well, but I can't stop it, and I certainly can't replicate it. His quarterback this year, LaRue, did you see he threw for almost 10,000 yards
yeah, I did.
in a season?
He's in my he's in my conference.
In a season. Well, he might have had 6,000 yards against your team.
Yes, I'm pretty sure he did.
In one game.
I have to, it's a pain in my butt because I got to go against both North Texas and Maryland on a yearly basis,
Right.
and they just shred my secondary every year.
Oh, and and I Darren stepped down from Baylor, but I mean, look what he's doing. And Baylor's not a good prestige team. 61. I mean, that's 9 points lower than Danny at North Texas, and he still pulled in the number 32 class. And I had a hard time with him this past year. So I'm actually kind of glad he stepped down from that gig. you know, I hope
Well,
he,
yeah,
I hope he didn't. I hope he didn't pull Atlanta Falcons and leave his playbook behind when he left, because I want that nightmare to be gone.
Well, and going back to North Texas, I know Danny, and I know that you know Danny outside of our leagues and
Yeah.
forums, and he's a pretty successful, actually, basketball coach at the high school level. So it doesn't really surprise me that he's that good in developing game plans for this.
Oh, and he's pursuing his master's degree, and I think he's got a 3.7 or a 3.9 GPA in his master's program.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, I couldn't do that on a good day. Not even if I put 2 good days together. So
I was happy to get a 2.8 in college.
I was just happy to remain eligible. I wasn't begging very much. Well, anything else that you see up there? I mean, I know I've dominated a lot of the conversation, but anything up here that stands out to you? Let's sort it out by average star here and see what that. So we got a good group of teams above 4, and then you can go way down and still be above a 3. But anything in there that jumps out at you?
I'd say Fresno State, for as few recruits as they had, they pulled in a fairly decent class. They only had 10 scholarships to give out, but they had 7 3 and 3 4-star recruits, which is pretty nice for a Conference USA team. So I expect to see them kind of build off that.
Yeah, I actually, the points is nice, but I tend to put a lot more credence in the average, because the total points can be skewed by the number of recruits. Your average star is a better indicator to me of what you're actually stocking your roster with. And, that certainly makes them jump out. That they're ranked that high, and I mean, well, there you are at Colorado. You didn't do badly. Um, I think that's one thing that is going to continue to hurt Danny a little bit. He's pretty far behind some of the top programs. I mean, Tech is at a 4. Texas was at a 4. He's at a 319, but that's still, he's certainly done. He does a lot with what he has, and he gets the most out of them. And I tell you what, with what he gets out of 2 and 3 star players, in a couple more seasons when he gets close to an 80 prestige,
Yeah.
I'm really scared to see what he's going to do when he starts recruiting the 5 star players. We're going to have another guy just like Darren that you already can't stop Danny's offense, and he has quote unquote crap players. What are we going to do when he's got a LaRue at quarterback as well? Uh,
It's funny. I actually just realized something because looking at that, and I was looking at what you just showed me with my class, and it lists me as 5 4-star, 9 3-star, and 1 2-star. But if I actually look at my commit page, I don't have a single 2-star on there. So it's definitely it looks like I may have found. It doesn't look like I got any busts in there, except for maybe one of the QBs I picked up has about a potential of 5. But curious as to how that works with the HTML versus what we see there.
I think there's sometimes if you look at the HTML, the ratings are a little bit different than what you're seeing in the game, because remember, what you're seeing in the game is based on your scout. The HTML is actually a I guess what you would consider an average scout. So
Gotcha.
if you've got a below average scout, he may be a little off. He's going to be more off than an average scout would be. If you have a great scout, you'll be actually dialed in a little bit better. So you may see some fluctuations there, and that's going to all be based on, I think, on your coach that is giving you those scouting numbers.
Gotcha.
So just something to think about. Um,
Learn
anyway,
something every day.
well, hey, that's a sign that you're still alive. Well, we've kind of hit our 30-minute mark here. We don't want to go too long. I think we were able to kind of get through the top 25. So we're going to go ahead and call this an episode. And Sean, thanks for joining me. I hope you had some fun doing this.
I did,
And
John. Thank you very much for having me on the program, and see if we can get some other coaches involved as well here in the future.
well, we can do that, but I'll definitely hit you up for another guest role down the road. Heck, if you even want to become a regular sidekick, we can even get that under negotiations. So I appreciate you hanging out with us, and we will see you guys next time on WWCF Radio. Take care.